Did you know that in the Middle Ages, there was a profession where people literally dove into rivers of human waste every day? And no, I'm not talking metaphorically. There were men and women who descended to the depths of medieval castles and towns to clean latrines that hadn't been cleaned in months, sometimes years. Imagine the smell. Imagine the diseases. Imagine waking up every morning knowing your workday would involve hours of swimming in. Well, you get the idea. This was just one of hundreds of medieval professions that would make anyone today run screaming in horror. Today we'll explore the most disgusting, dangerous, and degrading jobs that existed during the 1,000 years of the Middle Ages. And I guarantee that after this video, you'll never complain about your current job again if you're curious to learn what life was like for these brave or desperate people who took on these jobs. Subscribe to the channel and leave a comment letting me know what time you're watching this video. This helps me understand when you watch our content most. Let's begin our journey through the darkest and most stinking alleys of human history. The Middle Ages, which spanned roughly the 5th to the 15th centuries, was a period when human life was worth very little, especially if you were born into the working class. There were no labor laws, human rights, or even the slightest concern for workplace safety. People did whatever it took to survive, even if it meant putting their lives at constant risk or enduring conditions we would consider torture today. The first job on our grim list is that of the latrines cleaners, also known as rakers or gong farmers. These men were responsible for cleaning medieval sanitation facilities, which were essentially deep pits where people defecated. Imagine pits up to 10 meters deep, completely filled with human waste that accumulated for months. The extreme physical labor of breaking stones caused permanent deformities in the back and arms. During the winter, the wet stones became extremely slippery, causing fatal falls. Many workers developed deafness due to the constant noise of breaking stones. Primitive tools frequently broke, sending metal fragments into workers' eyes and faces. Medieval foundry workers handled molten metals using primitive and extremely dangerous equipment. They worked in furnaces that reached temperatures exceeding 1,500 degrees Celsius. Without any modern protective equipment, molten metal explosions were common when water accidentally came into contact with the liquid metal. Many workers died instantly when splashes of molten metal reached vital parts of their bodies. The toxic fumes from the molten metals caused severe poisoning, often resulting in slow, agonizing deaths. Workers frequently lost their sight due to the intense flames and chemical fumes. During the summer, conditions in the foundries became nearly unbearable, and many workers fainted from the extreme heat. Primitive molds frequently ruptured, causing molten metal to leak out and severely burn the workers. Many developed permanent respiratory problems due to the constant inhalation of toxic metal fumes. The profession of war scribe may seem safe, but in medieval times it was extremely dangerous. These scribes accompanied armies to document battles and negotiations, constantly putting themselves in combat situations. Many were captured and tortured for information on military strategy. They often worked in tents near battlefields, making them easy targets for surprise attacks. During sieges, scribes were trapped inside besieged cities, facing starvation, disease, and eventual massacre. Many died from diseases contracted in the unsanitary military camps. Scribes also served as spies, an activity that often resulted in execution if discovered. During long journeys with armies, they faced bandits, extreme weather conditions, and frequently became lost in hostile territory. Many war scribes developed psychological trauma from the horrific scenes they witnessed and had to document. During epidemics, corpse carriers faced deadly risks daily. During the Black Death and other epidemics, these workers collected bodies from homes, streets, and hospitals using horse-drawn carts. They worked without any protection against disease, often contracting the same illnesses that killed their victims. The smell of decomposing bodies was so strong that many carriers vomited constantly while working. They frequently encountered people who were still alive but had been presumed dead, creating traumatic situations. During the winter, bodies froze in the carts, making them extremely difficult to remove. Carriers were frequently attacked by desperate families unwilling to hand over their dead loved ones. Many developed severe depression due to the constant morbid nature of their work. The horses that pulled the carts often died of disease or exhaustion, leaving the carriers to pull the heavy carts manually. The rat catcher profession during epidemics was essential, but extremely dangerous. These workers entered basements, sewers, and other infested areas to capture disease-spreading rats. They often contracted bubonic plague directly from infected rats. The work involved crawling through extremely cramped and unsanitary spaces where the air was toxic. Many rat catchers died of asphyxiation in poorly ventilated sewers. They used primitive traps that frequently failed, forcing them to capture rats with their bare hands. Rat bites were extremely common and often resulted in serious infections. During floods, rat catchers had to work in contaminated waters filled with animal waste and carcasses. Many developed severe phobias due to constant exposure to rat swarms. The work was primarily performed at night, when rats were most active, adding the dangers of darkness to the already numerous risks of the profession. Medieval armor makers faced unique dangers in their workshops. They worked with extremely hot metals using heavy hammers that frequently slipped, causing serious fractures. The constant sparks from the heated metal often caused fires in the workshops, burning the makers and destroying months of work. The smoke and fumes from the heated metal caused severe respiratory problems. Many makers lost their hearing due to the constant noise of hammers striking metal. When creating complex armor, makers had to work in extremely uncomfortable positions for hours, causing permanent spinal deformities. The sharp tools used to shape the metal frequently slipped, causing deep cuts. Many makers developed early arthritis due to the constant repetitive motions. During the summer, the heat in the workshops became nearly deadly, and many makers fainted due to the combination of extreme heat and toxic fumes. The royal messenger profession during the Middle Ages was extremely dangerous due to the long journeys through hostile territories. Messengers traveled alone for hundreds of miles carrying valuable information, becoming frequent targets of bandits and enemy spies. Many were tortured and killed for the information they carried. During the winter, messengers frequently died of cold or were trapped in blizzards. They traveled on horseback along primitive and dangerous roads where falls were common and often fatal. Horses frequently died of exhaustion or disease, leaving the messengers stranded in unfamiliar territory. During wars, messengers were frequently captured and executed as spies. Many contracted diseases during their journeys, dying far from home without medical care. Messengers also faced wild animals during nighttime journeys through dense forests. Medieval pottery workers faced constant risks in their hot, poorly ventilated workshops. They worked with kilns that reached extremely high temperatures, often suffering severe burns. The constant dust from the clay caused serious respiratory problems, a condition known as potter's lung. The fumes from the glazes and paints used in pottery were extremely toxic, causing slow but fatal poisoning. Many potters developed hand deformities due to the constant repetitive movements of molding clay. During droughts, good quality clay was difficult to obtain, forcing potters to work with inferior materials that frequently exploded in the kilns. Explosions sent sharp fragments flying, seriously injuring workers. Many potters lost fingers due to accidents with primitive pottery wheels. During the winter, keeping the kilns lit became extremely expensive, forcing many potters to work in unsuitable conditions. Glassmaking in the Middle Ages was one of the most dangerous professions due to the extreme temperatures and toxic materials involved. Glassmakers worked in furnaces that reached temperatures exceeding 1,400 degrees Celsius, wearing only leather clothing for protection. They often suffered severe burns when molten glass splashed onto their skin. Constant inhalation of silica fumes caused a fatal lung disease known as silicosis. Many glassmakers slowly suffocated to death due to the gradual hardening of their lungs. Shards of broken glass were a constant threat, causing deep cuts that often became infected. When creating complex pieces, glassmakers had to work in extremely close proximity to molten glass, dramatically increasing the risk of fatal burns. The tools used to shape the glass frequently broke due to the extreme heat, sending shards of hot metal into workers' faces. Many glassmakers developed early cataracts due to constant exposure to the intense glare of the furnaces. Church and cathedral builders faced unique dangers due to the massive scale of their constructions. They worked at extreme heights without any modern safety equipment, using only primitive scaffolding made of poorly rigged wood. Falls from great heights were so common that several workers were expected to die. During the construction of each cathedral, the enormous stones used in the construction weighed tons and often crushed workers. When primitive lifting systems failed during storms, working on tall towers became extremely dangerous due to lightning strikes. Many builders were electrocuted while working on tall metal structures. Work often continued during extreme weather conditions, including snow, rain, and high winds. Many workers developed permanent deformities due to the constant weight they carried. Primitive tools frequently broke, causing serious injuries. During winter, the wet stones became extremely slippery, dramatically increasing the risk of fatal falls. The medicine and potion distiller profession was dangerous due to the toxic materials and primitive chemical processes involved. These workers frequently experimented with unknown substances, accidentally poisoning themselves in the process. They worked with mercury, arsenic, lead, and other highly toxic substances without any protection. Many distillers slowly died from heavy metal poisoning. Explosions were common during experiments with unstable materials. The toxic fumes from the experiments caused severe neurological problems, including tremors, memory loss, and erratic behavior. Many distillers were persecuted by religious authorities who considered their work witchcraft. During epidemics, they worked desperately to create cures, often exposing themselves to the very diseases they were trying to cure. Primitive glass tools frequently shattered, causing serious cuts. Many distillers developed severe respiratory problems due to the constant inhalation of chemical fumes. Salt mine workers faced particularly brutal conditions. Due to the corrosive nature of the environment, they worked in deep underground tunnels where the air was constantly saturated with salt particles that corroded their lungs. Many developed a severe form of silicosis specific to salt mines. Constant exposure to salt caused open skin sores that never healed properly. Workers were often blinded by salt crystals accumulating in their eyes. During floods, salt mines became extremely dangerous due to the formation of concentrated brines that burned the skin. Cave-ins were common due to the unstable nature of the salt formations. Many workers died trapped when entire tunnels collapsed. Dehydration was a constant problem due to the dry, saline environment. During the summer, temperatures in the underground mines became unbearable. The medieval whale hunting profession, though less common, was extremely dangerous when practiced. Hunters used small, primitive vessels to prey on huge, powerful animals. Many boats were destroyed by wounded whales that attacked with deadly force. Hunters frequently drowned when their vessels were capsized by whales. Primitive harpoons often failed to penetrate properly, resulting in injured and extremely aggressive whales. During storms at sea, small hunting vessels frequently sank. Hunters spent days at sea without adequate food or fresh water. Many developed scurvy due to vitamin deficiency. Processing captured whales was extremely unsanitary, with hunters working surrounded by rotting flesh and swarms of flies. Many contracted serious illnesses while processing the rotten whale meat. Medieval paper makers faced unique dangers due to the materials and processes they used. They worked with large quantities of rotting rags that were left to ferment for months, creating an environment teeming with dangerous bacteria and fungi. The smell of the decaying rags was so strong that it caused constant nausea and headaches. Workers frequently contracted severe respiratory illnesses from inhaling fungal spores. During the retting process, they worked with primitive machines that frequently crushed fingers and hands. The chemicals used to bleach the paper were highly corrosive and caused severe chemical burns. Many makers lost fingers due to constant exposure to corrosive substances. The constant humidity in the paper mills created ideal conditions for mold growth, causing chronic respiratory problems during the winter. Keeping the mills heated was extremely difficult, forcing workers to work in freezing and damp conditions. The Medieval warship builder profession posed unique risks due to the scale and complexity of these vessels. Builders worked with enormous, heavy timbers that frequently fell, crushing workers. During the installation of weapons such as catapults and ballista, accidents were common due to the weight and complexity of this equipment. Builders often worked over water, increasing the risk of drowning. During storms, shipyards became extremely dangerous due to strong winds that could topple heavy structures. The specialized tools used in shipbuilding were particularly dangerous and often caused serious injuries. Many builders developed respiratory problems due to the fumes from tar and other sealing materials. During the lathing of ships, accidents frequently occurred when the massive hulls slipped unexpectedly. Builders also faced constant pressure to complete ships quickly during wartime, leading to neglect of safety precautions. We have reached the end of this dark journey through the most dangerous and repugnant labor of the Middle Ages. Through these accounts, we can clearly see that medieval life was not the romantic adventure we often imagine. It was a time when survival often depended on accepting jobs that put one's life at constant risk, where labor rights, safety equipment, or even the slightest concern for the well-being of workers existed. These courageous, or perhaps simply desperate, people literally built the civilization we know today with their own hands, often paying with their lives for every stone laid, every tool forged, every road built. Their stories remind us to value not only the technological and social advances we have today, but also the human dignity and labor rights for which generations fought. The next time you complain about your job, remember these medieval men and women who faced unimaginable horrors just to survive another day. If this video made you reflect on our history and appreciate modern working conditions more, leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more fascinating historical content, and in the comments, tell me which of these medieval professions you found most frightening. Until the next adventure through history, these men's job was to descend with ropes and buckets, literally immerse themselves in this nauseating mixture, and remove everything manually. They worked mainly at night, not only to avoid disturbing the residents, but because the smell during the day became absolutely unbearable. Many of them died of asphyxiation from the toxic gases, others contracted deadly diseases, and some simply drowned in the waste. In London, these workers were so essential that they received relatively high wages by the standards of the time, but this didn't compensate for the fact that most died before the age of 40. The profession of gravedigger during epidemics deserves a separate chapter on our list of medieval horrors. During the Black Death of the 14th century, which killed between 1/3 and 1/2 of the European population, gravediggers worked 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They didn't just dig individual graves that would have been impossible, considering the death toll. Instead, they dug enormous mass graves, some over 100 meters long and 10 meters deep. The bodies were stacked like cordwood, layer upon layer, without ceremony or respect. The worst part is that many of these gravediggers worked while they themselves were infected with the plague. They knew they would likely die within days, but they continued working because someone needed to deal with the dead. The smell was so strong it could be smelled from miles away. Gravediggers developed techniques for working while holding vinegar-soaked cloths over their noses, but this offered little real protection. Many of them hallucinated due to constant exposure to the miasmas of death and the diseases they contracted. Leather tanners lived in a world of putrid odors and dangerous chemicals. The tanning process in the Middle Ages involved soaking animal hides in mixtures of urine, dog feces, crushed tree bark, and other natural chemicals for weeks or months. Tanners spent their days with their hands immersed in these corrosive mixtures, scraping rotting flesh and fat from the hides with sharp knives. Their hands often developed open wounds that never healed properly due to constant exposure to the chemicals. The smell of tanneries was so intense that these workshops were always built on the outskirts of cities, far from where decent people lived. Tanners frequently lost fingers to infected cuts, and many developed severe respiratory problems from the constant inhalation of toxic fumes. Their clothes were permanently stained and smelly, causing them to be socially ostracized even outside of work. The profession of sheep shearing may seem harmless compared to others, but in medieval times it was extraordinarily dangerous. Medieval shearers didn't have the modern, safe tools we have today. They used primitive scissors, often dull and rusty, to cut the wool from sheep that were often sick, dirty, and aggressive. Medieval sheep were not the docile animals we know today. They were semi-wild and could easily break bones with kicks. Furthermore, sheep carried parasites and skin diseases and often had open, infected wounds. Shearers worked in poorly ventilated sheds, constantly breathing wool and dust, which caused a lung condition known as shearer's lung. Many developed serious hand infections from the constant cutting from the dull shears, and the infections often spread down the arm, causing gangrene. During the summer, the heat in the shearing sheds became deadly, and it was not uncommon for shearers to faint and be trampled by the sheep. Medieval miners faced dangers that would make modern miners seem like office workers. Medieval mines were essentially holes dug into the earth without any proper structural support. Collapses were so common they were considered a normal part of the job. Miners descended hundreds of meters deep by ropes or precarious ladders, carrying only torches or candles for light. The air in the mines was often toxic due to natural gases, and many miners simply passed out and died of asphyxiation. Ventilation systems were lacking, so oxygen quickly ran out. Miners worked in such cramped spaces that they often had to crawl on their bellies through tunnels, less than a meter deep. Their tools were primitive, poorly forged iron picks, wooden shovels, and sometimes just their bare hands. Injuries were common, from deep cuts to broken bones from falling rocks. Many developed a condition known as black lung due to the constant inhalation of coal dust and other minerals. The life expectancy of a medieval miner rarely exceeded 30 years. The butcher's profession in the Middle Ages was far more brutal and dangerous than we can imagine today. Medieval butchers didn't work with refrigerated and processed meats as we know them. They slaughtered live animals, often in completely unsanitary conditions. There was no refrigeration, so the meat began to rot immediately after slaughter. Butchers worked surrounded by swarms of flies, rats, and other vermin that fed on the meat scraps. The smell of rotting meat was constant, and many butchers completely lost their sense of smell after a few years of work. They frequently contracted animal-borne diseases, ranging from simple infections to deadly ones like anthrax. Their tools were crude knives and axes that often slipped, causing deep cuts and the loss of fingers. Butchers worked barefoot on floors covered in blood, animal fat, and waste, making slips and falls extremely common. During the summer, conditions became so unsanitary that many cities banned slaughter during the hottest months, leaving butchers without income for months. Medieval alcohol distillers worked with dangerous chemical processes using primitive and flammable equipment. Medieval distillation involved boiling large quantities of fermented liquids in metal cauldrons. Over open fires, explosions were extremely common, causing severe burns or instant death. Distillers worked in extremely hot environments, often in poorly ventilated cellars where alcohol vapors accumulated to dangerous levels. Many distillers died from inhaling toxic vapors or from accidental alcohol poisoning. Burns were a daily occurrence, ranging from minor burns to the hands to accidents that left workers permanently disfigured. In addition to the physical dangers, distillers often became alcoholics due to constant exposure to alcohol and the easy access to it. Many lost their motor coordination over the years, making the work even more dangerous. Medieval authorities frequently persecuted illegal distillers, adding the risk of arrest or execution to the already numerous dangers of the profession. The profession of common soldier during the Middle Ages deserves a detailed analysis of the horrors they faced. Unlike the noble knights we know from legend, common soldiers were poorly trained, poorly equipped, and poorly fed peasants who were forced to fight in inhumane conditions. They marched hundreds of kilometers carrying heavy equipment, often without proper shoes, leaving trails of blood along the way. During battles, they faced not only the enemy's weapons, but also disease, hunger, and extreme cold. War wounds in the Middle Ages were particularly horrific because modern medicine was lacking. A simple arrow wound often meant a slow, agonizing Death from gangrene. Soldiers who survived battle often faced years of chronic pain and disability. Many lost limbs, which were amputated without anesthesia using blunt saws. Soldiers also worked as executioners after battles, executing prisoners of war, a task that left many with lasting psychological trauma. Castle builders faced deadly dangers every day during decades of construction. These workers carried stones weighing hundreds of pounds using only ropes and primitive pulley systems. Falls from great heights were so common that several workers were expected to die during the construction of each castle. They worked on poorly secured wooden scaffolding that frequently collapsed under the weight of the stones. During the winter, the stones became covered in ice, making them extremely slippery and drastically increasing the risk of accidents. Builders also faced attacks during construction. As castles were often built in disputed territories, they worked under constant threat of enemy arrows and surprise attacks. Many builders developed permanent spinal deformities due to the constant weight they carried. Primitive tools frequently broke, sending metal fragments into workers' eyes and faces. The profession of chimney sweep in the Middle Ages was very different from the romantic image we have today. Medieval chimney sweeps, often children due to the cramped space, climbed down chimneys covered in toxic soot and tar, often still hot from recent fires. Many died of asphyxiation due to the smoke and toxic gases that accumulated in the chimneys. Others burned to death while climbing down still hot chimneys. Children often became trapped in the narrow chimneys and died of dehydration or suffocation. The soot they constantly inhaled caused serious lung diseases that slowly killed them over years. Many developed cancer due to constant exposure to the toxic chemicals in the soot. Burns were frequent, from minor burns on the hands to severe burns that left permanent scars. Chimney sweeps also faced the constant risk of falling from high, steep roofs. Medieval candlemakers worked with extremely dangerous and toxic materials. The candlemaking process involved melting large amounts of animal tallow in cauldrons over open fires. The melted animal fat often caught fire, causing fires that killed workers. The smell of burning animal fat was so strong that it caused constant nausea and headaches. Candlemakers worked in extremely hot environments where it was easy to suffer dehydration and heat stroke. They frequently suffered serious burns while dipping wicks into hot wax. The constant smoke from the cauldrons caused severe respiratory problems, and many candlemakers developed a chronic cough that stayed with them for the rest of their lives. During the winter, the temperature difference between the hot cauldrons and the cold air caused heat stroke, which often resulted in pneumonia. The executioner's profession is obviously one of the darkest on our list. Medieval executioners not only executed criminals, they were also responsible for elaborate and prolonged torture. They had to master dozens of different methods of execution, from simple hangings to elaborate methods like dismemberment. The psychological work of regularly killing people caused severe mental trauma to most executioners. Many became alcoholics or developed mental disorders. Socially, executioners were completely ostracized. They were not allowed to attend churches, taverns, or social events. Their families were also shunned by the community. Many executioners ended up living isolated on the outskirts of cities. Besides the psychological aspects, the work was also physically dangerous. Victims' families often sought revenge, and executioners lived under constant threat of assassination. Many executioners were killed by angry mobs. During executions gone wrong, mill workers faced unique and constant dangers. Medieval mills were primitive and extremely dangerous machines. The grinding stones weighed tons and rotated at high speeds without any protection. Workers often had their fingers, hands, or even entire arms crushed by the stones. Grain dust created an explosive environment, and fires were extremely common. When a mill caught fire with workers inside, rarely anyone could escape. Workers also faced the constant danger of being struck by pieces of the grinding stones that broke off during operation. The constant dust caused severe respiratory problems, a condition known as miller's lung. Many developed a chronic cough that eventually killed them. During storms, working in windmills became extremely dangerous due to strong winds that could cause the blades to spin out of control. The dyer's profession in the Middle Ages involved working with extremely toxic chemicals. Medieval dyers used a variety of hazardous materials to create colors, including mercury, arsenic, lead, and fermented human urine. They spent entire days with their hands immersed in corrosive solutions that caused severe chemical burns. Many dyers lost fingers or developed wounds that never healed properly. Constant inhalation of toxic fumes caused neurological problems, including tremors, memory loss, and erratic behavior. Heavy metal poisoning was common, causing symptoms including extreme abdominal pain, vomiting blood, and eventual death. Dyers often developed permanent skin scars from absorbing the chemicals. The work environment was extremely poorly ventilated, concentrating the toxic fumes. During the dyeing process, workers had to stir large cauldrons of boiling liquid, often resulting in severe burns from splashes. Blacksmiths, though essential to medieval society, faced brutal working conditions. They worked in forges that reached temperatures of over 1,000 degrees Celsius, wearing only leather aprons for protection. Burns were a daily occurrence, from minor burns from flying sparks to severe burns from molten iron. Blacksmiths frequently lost hair, eyebrows, and body hair due to the extreme heat. The smoke and fumes from the forge caused severe respiratory problems, and many blacksmiths developed a chronic cough, known as blacksmith's lung. The extreme physical labor of hammering iron for hours caused permanent deformities in the back, arms, and hands. Many blacksmiths developed early and severe arthritis due to the repetitive motions. Sparks constantly flew into their eyes, and many blacksmiths lost their vision partially or completely. During the summer, conditions in the forge became nearly deadly due to the extreme heat. The medieval fishing profession was far more dangerous than modern fishing. Medieval fishermen used primitive, POORLY sealed wooden vessels that frequently sank during storms. They lacked safety equipment, communication systems, or reliable weather forecasts. Many fishermen simply disappeared at sea, never to be seen again. Fishing nets were handmade and frequently broke, causing fishermen to lose not only their catch, but also expensive equipment they could not replace. During the winter, fishing became extremely dangerous due to ice and violent storms. Fishermen frequently suffered from hypothermia and frostbite. Many lost toes and fingers due to the extreme cold. Small vessels were easily capsized by large waves, and most fishermen could not swim. In addition to natural hazards, fishermen also faced pirates and bandits who attacked isolated fishing vessels. Medieval road builders faced both natural and human dangers. They worked in often hostile territories, building roads through dangerous forests inhabited by bandits, wolves, and other predators. The work involved moving huge stones and digging through difficult terrain using only primitive hand tools. The builders were frequently attacked by bandit groups who saw the roads as a threat to their hideouts. They worked in extreme weather conditions, from scorching heat to freezing cold, without any adequate protection. During the winter, many builders froze to death or became trapped in blizzards. Primitive tools frequently broke, causing serious injuries. The extreme physical labor caused permanent spinal and joint damage. Many builders developed severe hernias due to the constant lifting of heavy objects. The barber-surgeon profession deserves special attention due to the unique combination of dangers they faced. These professionals not only cut hair, but also performed surgeries, tooth extractions, and medical treatments using primitive tools and without any knowledge of sterilization. They frequently contracted deadly diseases from their patients, including plague, tuberculosis, and syphilis. Unsterilized tools spread infections from patient to patient. Barber surgeons were frequently attacked by families of patients who died. During procedures, they worked without anesthesia, so patients often struggled violently during surgeries, injuring the barbers themselves. Many barber surgeons developed psychological problems due to their patients' constant screams of pain. Sharp tools frequently slipped, causing deep cuts to the barbers themselves. During epidemics, they worked around the clock treating dying patients, often contracting the varied diseases they were trying to cure. Medieval shipyard workers built ships in extremely dangerous conditions. They worked with enormous, heavy timbers, that frequently fell, crushing workers. Tools were primitive and frequently broke, sending fragments into workers' faces and eyes. During construction, workers had to work at dangerous heights without any safety equipment. Falls were extremely common and often fatal. Workers also faced the danger of drowning when working on partially submerged ships. During the winter, the timbers became slippery due to ice, dramatically increasing the risk of accidents. Vapors from tar and other sealing materials caused severe respiratory problems. Many workers developed permanent deformities due to the extreme physical labor of bending and shaping heavy timbers. The milling profession was dangerous in ways few can imagine. Millers worked with primitive machines powered by water or wind that frequently spun out of control. Giant grinding stones could break loose and roll, crushing anyone in their path. Grain dust created a highly explosive environment, and a single spark could cause an explosion that destroyed the entire mill. Millers often worked alone, so when accidents occurred, there was no one to help. During storms, windmills became extremely dangerous due to strong winds that caused the blades to spin out of control. Millers had to climb high into the mill's structures to make adjustments, often during dangerous weather conditions. Many millers were electrocuted by lightning during storms. The constant vibration of the machines caused hearing problems, and many millers became completely deaf. Medieval bridge builders faced unique and extremely dangerous challenges. They had to work over fast-flowing, deep rivers using primitive equipment. Many builders drowned when they fell from precarious scaffolding. During foundation construction, workers had to dive into cold, turbulent waters to position massive stones. Hypothermia was a common cause of death. Builders also faced attacks from communities who didn't want bridges in their territories. The massive stones used in construction often crushed workers when primitive lifting systems failed. During winter, working over frozen rivers added the danger of falling through the ice. Many builders developed severe rheumatism due to constant exposure to moisture. Tools frequently slipped from wet hands, causing serious injuries. The hunting profession in the Middle Ages was far more dangerous than we might imagine. Medieval hunters lacked reliable firearms, relying primarily on bows, spears, and primitive traps. They hunted extremely dangerous animals, including wild boars, bears, and wolves, which frequently attacked and killed the hunters. Many hunters were killed by wounded animals, which became even more aggressive. They worked alone in dense forests where it was easy to get lost or attacked by bandits. During the winter, many hunters died of the cold or became trapped in snowstorms. Primitive traps often injured the hunters themselves when poorly placed. Many hunters contracted diseases from wild animals, including rabies. They often went days without food when game was scarce. Primitive weapons often failed at the crucial moment, leaving hunters defenseless against dangerous animals. Salt pen workers faced brutal conditions, extracting sea salt. They worked under the scorching sun for hours, often developing severe heat stroke. Constant exposure to salt caused open skin wounds that never healed properly. Many workers were blinded by salt crystals blowing into their eyes during the wind. The concentrated salt water caused severe dehydration, and many workers died of thirst. Ironically surrounded by water, during storms, the salt pans became extremely dangerous due to high waves and strong winds. Workers were frequently swept out to sea and drowned. The physical labor of carrying heavy bags of salt caused permanent back problems. Many developed respiratory problems due to the constant inhalation of salt particles. During the winter, working in salt pans became extremely dangerous due to ice and slippery conditions. The medieval lumberjack profession was extremely dangerous due to primitive tools and a lack of safety techniques. Lumberjacks used poorly balanced axes that often slipped, causing serious injuries to their legs and feet. Huge trees fell unpredictably, crushing lumberjacks who couldn't escape in time. They worked in dense forests where it was easy to get lost or attacked by wild animals. During winter, ice made the trees extremely slippery and dangerous to cut. Many lumberjacks were crushed to death by unexpectedly falling branches. The extreme physical work caused permanent spinal and joint injuries. Many lumberjacks lost fingers or entire hands due to accidents with the axes during storms. Working in the forest became deadly due to strong winds that unexpectedly felled trees. Operators of catapults and other war machines faced unique dangers during medieval conflicts. These primitive machines frequently exploded or shattered during use, killing their operators instantly. Ropes and timbers under extreme tension often snapped violently, sending deadly fragments flying in all directions. Operators were prime targets during battles, constantly attacked by enemy archers. Many were crushed to death by their own machines when release systems failed. During transport, the heavy machines frequently toppled, crushing their operators. Loading heavy projectiles caused serious spinal injuries. Many operators lost their hearing due to the extreme noise of the machines in operation. During prolonged sieges, operators worked under constant enemy bombardment. The gunpowder maker profession, which began to emerge in the late Middle Ages, was one of the most dangerous. Gunpowder makers worked with highly explosive materials using primitive techniques. Accidental explosions were extremely common, often killing not only the maker, but also destroying entire buildings. Gunpowder makers frequently lost fingers, hands, or entire faces in smaller explosions. Constant inhalation of sulfur dust and other chemicals caused severe respiratory problems. Many gunpowder makers developed permanent tremors due to chemical poisoning. While mixing the ingredients, a single spark could cause a fatal explosion. Gunpowder makers often worked by candlelight, dramatically increasing the risk of accidental ignition. Many burned to death when their workshops caught fire. The secretive nature of the work meant that when accidents did occur, there was often no one around to help. Quarry workers faced constant dangers extracting stone for construction. They worked in deep holes where cave-ins were extremely common. Many workers were buried alive when stone walls collapsed. The constant stone dust caused severe respiratory problems, a condition known as stone lung. Workers often lost fingers or entire hands due to accidents with primitive tools. During controlled explosions using primitive gunpowder, many workers were killed by flying rock fragments.